Tonight, the first arc of Green Arrow has already wrapped up, and the writers should feel free to end it there. Does anybody else remember that time that Barack Obama got possessed by a ghost? And some say the world will end in fire, but I say it will end by a small boy in a plastic bubble. All this and more on this week's episode of the Not So New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 9 of the Not So New 52. I am your host and hey, we made it to month number 3. Give it up everybody. Month number 3. You know, I was doing some research and apparently it takes 66 days to form a new habit. I think that's implying that you do it daily, but whatever, 66 days. I also looked up that apparently, as of the release of this episode on November 2nd, it has been 63 days since I started this show. So I guess that's why I'm still waiting till the last minute to read all of my books, do all of my recording, editing, and uploading. I have a problem. Ha 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 ha. Ha! Speaking of issues, let's see what's coming out this week. This week, November 2nd, 2011, DC Comics released such fantastic books as the number 3 issues of Detective Comics, Batwing, Action Comics, Red Lanterns, Green Arrow, Justice League International, Men of War, O.M.A.C, Stormwatch, Hawk and Dove, Static Shock, Animal Man, and Swamp Thing. Gotta say, real mixed bag on that one. Some of them I love, some of them I love to hate. One of them is Hawk and Dove by Sterling Gates, so far the only comic creator who has liked one of my tweets. I promise that won't influence my rating at all. This is an honorable show. But alas, let's move on to our first comic of the week, Detective Comics number 3. Detective Comics number 3, written and art by Tony S. Daniel. We last left off with Batman coming across the Dollmaker, finally, and supposedly the all chopped up and sewn together corpse of Jim Gordon. This issue we pick up pretty much right afterwards. Batman is informing us how his needle that he was stabbed with has numbed his entire left side and it's spreading across his body, so he doesn't have a lot of time to get out of here. And Dollmaker's like, yes, the paralysis will spread. I have to make sure I don't hurt that pretty little face of yours for what comes next. And immediately Batman's like, this isn't Jim Gordon. The eye color's wrong and he has a synthetic mustache. So if you still have Jim Gordon, and Dollmaker's like, of course I have Jim Gordon. You're going to be joining him. All right, beat him up, Bentley, but don't hurt the face. Bentley is the big brute guy. So Bentley makes a charge. Batman takes him out. Immediately everyone else leaps in and the don't hurt the face thing goes right out the window. One of them is this little like gremlin-looking dude who named Jack in the Box, who wraps around Batman's back and refuses to let go. So as Batman realizes he's running out of time, he's like, all right, I'm taking this guy with me. And he backflips out a window and grabs Jack in the Box as he stumbles his way for some enhanced interrogation. We cut to an abandoned Mercy Hospital in Gotham. Gordon wakes up, he sees he has sutures on his side, and he's like, oh God, what did you take from me? Ah, Jesus. He looks up, and there's Olivia, the little girl, who I guess is definitely an important player now. She's like, hey Gordon, you're going to die, so let me help you. And she's like, how did you manage to survive, the little girl? He's like, oh, I'm a prisoner too. They want me to be part of their freaky little family. Is there, like, any way that we can find Batman? And she's like, or Gordon's like, no, you don't find Batman. You might be able to get a message to him, though, if you follow my instructions. And we cut away to some abandoned steel mill or something like that. And Batman's just beating the crap out of Jack in the Box. And he's making a couple of, not even deductions, more just observations, where he's like, this dude's arms, like, just flail around randomly, so I have a feeling that they were completely replaced with something synthetic. And because of that, I feel like he's pretty much been modified to the point where he doesn't feel any pain. Also, his tongue is missing, so he's of no use to me. And he kicks Jack in the Box in the face and leaves with apparently some new information, but I don't know what. Then we get back to the GCPD. Harvey Bullock is outside with a whole bunch of reporters. We're all basically saying, like, oh, is Commissioner dead? Is he going to lose his job? Is the Joker involved? Blah, blah, blah. And Bullock's like, look, we're going to hold a press conference. Shut up. And Charlotte Rivers, who was back in issue like 2 or whatever, shows up. And she's like, oh, but I'm on live TV. Can you answer my question? Which is literally the exact same thing of they found a body of James Gordon, and is that actually him? And they're just like, look, the press conference coming up, just pay attention to that. We see a last panel where Olivia supposedly is sneaking into the police department. Cut back to Wayne Manor, specifically the Batcave. Bruce Wayne's just down there, not in costume, just at his computer, thinking about the Wesley Mathis case, the serial killer. And apparently the serial killer, he brought his son out on a bunch of his hunting trips and showed him all the ways to cut up a human body without wasting any pieces, and blah, 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 blah. It's the son of Wesley Mathis, named Barton Mathis. And supposedly that was deduced instead of just immediately there. I don't know. Someone at GCPD has flipped on the bat signal, and Bruce Wayne gets ready to go. Cut back to Mercy Hospital. The doll maker's taunting Gordon because now that it's been revealed to the reader who he is, we can just drop that secret altogether. And he's like, oh, you killed my father, Gordon, and you nearly ruined my life. And he's like, I don't know who you are, dude. You don't look familiar because your face is all messed up. And he's like, you've killed so many people you don't even recognize them anymore. And then because of the GCPD, Batman's there, and Olivia's the one who turned on the light. And he's like, yeah, you should. Gordon's the only one who touches my light. Don't do that. But she hands him a note from Gordon, matches his handwriting, and it says the word mercy, but the R is backwards. He's like, all right, by the way, I knew it was you, Olivia, so I've had this nice officer here from downstairs come to take care of you. He'll take you somewhere safe. Batman goes off to Mercy Hospital. The officer is apparently not a good guy or something. I mean, he pulls out a taser on the little girl when she refuses to go. And so Olivia pulls out a knife, slashes the dude's throat, and says, father would be disgusted by such a waste. So she's evil now, too. He arrives at Mercy Hospital. He deduces that the backwards R means that it's a setup and he needs to watch his back, because of course. He gets there, Dollmaker's like, hey, Batman, I'm still after you. My brute's going to choke you out now, and he does. And then Batman wakes up, and apparently he's being, like, live streamed, or there are a bunch of people watching him in an audience of the operating room. I don't know. But there are other people there who are paying to be there to see Batman be killed. And he's like, well, we got to prove you're the real Batman, though, so... And he sends in a bunch of human puppets that are all doll-makered up to look like the Joker. So there's like 7 Jokers all attacking Batman. Final page of the issue. I don't dislike this. I think it's good. It does feel like over each issue we're losing more and more of the deduction stuff. Like the first issue was nothing but him walking through his entire thought process of here's how I got from A to B to C. Where in this one, when he's deducing the identity of Barton, he just waxes poetically about like, yes, Wesley Mathis was doing things to body, and he mixes and matches parts, and somehow that leads us to the sun. And I'm like, all right, I don't think that's really an A to B thing, but you do you, Batman. So yeah, I think we're losing a bit of the detective in the Detective Comics, but it's still not bad. The art's fantastic. I don't particularly think Dollmaker's that terrifying yet, especially because he's kind of just failed at both things, like Batman and Gordon. He hasn't done anything really yet. But hey, maybe they'll do something with him. Either way, I'm giving this a 7.5. I am looking forward to seeing where it goes, but it feels like we're losing steam quick, and I really hope that we can pick it back up. Batwing, number 3, written by Judd, Winick, art by Ben Oliver. Last left off, Batwing was stabbed pretty bad, and then we got a whole fight scene between a hero named Thunderfall and Massacre, and then Batwing took a bunch of adrenaline, got in his batsuit, and came to save the day. Oh, and Thunderfall lost a hand. This issue picks up 11 years ago, there's some warlord who's taking a bunch of like kids and training them to be soldiers or whatever. And he's being recounted of these two kids who were brothers, and they just wrecked shop. They killed everyone. Every armed man was met with a quick death, and they barely got their guns up at that. So these boys were standing above everybody. But then it came time for the women and children to be taken from the village, as I guess is tradition. And the brothers refused to let any of their own men bring harm to these people. And so they were like, the warlord, as he's hearing the story, is like, so why weren't they stopped? And he's like, we tried. They also killed all of our men. And to be fair, they say they beat those men. So maybe they weren't killed. But either way, the warlord hears about this and he's like, are you kidding? Like, he's the dudes are kind of sort of like, should we have killed them? And he's like, no, are you kidding me? They are exactly what we want. Bring me these brothers. What are their names? And the one's name is Isaac, and the older one's name is David Zavimbe, who is our Batwing. So now we have a backstory. Then we get introduced to right now, and Batwing is taking the fight, but he's already pretty much like dead on his feet. He's bleeding out. He's dehydrated. He feels like he ran 5 miles, but he's just like, all right, I just need to use all of my little Batwing tricks in order to take out Massacre. So he like flies up in the sky, uses a grapple hook on Massacre, and just brings him up high so that, he can take him out. As he's up in the air, he whips him upwards, punches him back down to the ground, and he's like, cool, that should give me a minute. He goes and talks to Thunderfall, and he's like, hey, you're losing a lot of blood out of your stump arm. Can I go ahead and just heal that up for you? He uses a Batwing tech to do it. He's like, cool, now I'm going to fly you to the hospital, but I need you to stay awake on me. Thunderfall's like, he's behind you. And Massacre comes up, tries to get a shot on Batwing. Batwing blocks it and says how Thunderfall has earned nothing but death. He's not a hero. He deserves to die. Batwing, once again, he grabs Massacre by the face, activates a taser in his suit, shocks him, and he's like, cool, that should take him out for a while. And then he finds Thunderfall's arm. He's like, I could get this on ice. I have some liquid nitrogen in the suit. And then Massacre's already back up, takes the shot, and punches out Batwing. And again, he just keeps on going on and on, like, oh, Thunderfall, the kingdom, they're all evil, they're all bad people. You shouldn't be protecting them. And as Massacre's going for what seems to be a final strike, but at the same point, he hasn't really landed anything on Batwing yet, except for that, knife through the chest thing. Thunderfall uses his spare hand, gets Massacre away by shocking him with crazy whatever. And he's defending Batwing because Batwing is the same sort of hero he was. He puts on a uniform and saves the people who are downtrodden, blah, blah, blah. We get a couple of narration panels that basically give backstory to the African Justice League, the Kingdom, and how there was a 30-year war. There was a genocidal dictator who took over the entire nation. There were warlords everywhere, and the Kingdom came up and just ended it. They stopped the warlords, and they brought peace to the country, and they're regarded as the highest of heroes. So Thunderfall passes out, but Massacre's finally out for a while, long enough for Batwing to get him up and take him to the hospital. And as the hospital's trying to heal him, get the bleeding to stop, Batwing questioning him and be like, why is he after you? What is he saying with you guys being bad? And Thunderfall basically admits to it. He's like, he knows what the Kingdom did. We betrayed you all the people of Africa. 50,000 lost because of us. We have blood on our hands, so much blood, we deserve to die. And he dies. He doesn't survive either the trauma or the blood loss or whatever it is. He dies on the hospital table. And that's where we leave off the issue with Batwing saying the fight has just begun. But we also find out that the Kingdom did something that makes Massacre feel justified, and it's true at the very least. I do really enjoy this issue. I've enjoyed Batwing for the entire part that we've gone on so far. I really like how they waited until this far in to give even the slightest hint of what is David's backstory, and how he he was alive during this brutal time in their history, and he was trained as a soldier. He knows how to fight. It's more so than just, I just got a Batman suit and now I'm strong. It's no, he was a trained killer beforehand, and he's using it for the side of good. The entire fight scene, it's good. They occasionally use a silhouette, I think, a bit too frequently, but they use it stylistically, so like it works, but it takes away from the fact that, like, I don't know, it's such good coloring. The painterly style is so good, but the fact that some of the things are in silhouette makes me feel like, okay, I'm not going to finish both these characters in this panel, so I'm just going to use a stylistic thing where one of them is all blacked out. And I'm like, I guess, but it still feels a little bit like, okay, you had to pick and choose. But no, it's a good plot. It's great art, in fact. I'm more interested in the side stuff, everything going on around Batwing, than I am Batwing himself right now, but I feel like that's by design. I think we'll get to a part where I care about Batwing himself at a much later date. But for right now, I'm going to go ahead and give this one a 7. Solid read, very good. Would definitely check it out if you have not already. So yeah, looking forward to the continuing adventures of Batwing, Child Soldier. Action Comics number 3, written by Grant Morrison, art by Rags Morales, additional art by Gene Ha. We last left off with Superman escaping the facility that he was being held in by Lex Luthor, and Lex Luthor talking to some sort of alien ship thing on a cell phone. This issue picks up with the last days of Krypton, as is tradition, and there's some sort of party going on, just a bunch of, whining and dining, talking about, oh, did you see that on the teleband or whatever? And there's specifically talk of Jor-El, Superman's dad, hearing about, oh, the planet core is unstable and blah, 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 but everyone's just writing him off because, it's just a guy spouting off doomsday stuff. But his wife, Laura, who's taking care of baby Kal-El at this party, is like, hey, you got to get out of Kandor, because I guess they're in Kandor. You got to get out of Kandor because something's going on. She's like, oh, is it your tectonic plate things? He's like, no. Actually, there was a science professor who allowed an alien consciousness into, like, the system, and it's now turned on everybody and is going to kill us all. So get out of here, get off the planet. And then the science thing starts talking and saying, like, planet Krypton, you will soon be destroyed. I am preparing a backup of your imminent destruction, all of your data, and I will be taking all of you... Sorry, the Terminauts will preserve significant artifacts. However you want to read that. So it's just this whole scene where a bunch of people screaming, oh no, geez, we're all going to die. And as Baby Kal-El, and Lara are getting away, Kal-El looks back and just sees the entire city of Kandor is absorbed in this giant green light. And throughout this, we've gotten tiny little panels of Clark in his bed, like, having a nightmare, and that was it. He wakes up, he was having a nightmare of the last days of Krypton. We move forward. His landlord's knocking at the door. He's getting a call from Jimmy. He has to get all the Superman stuff hidden. He stuffs it inside of a gym bag. And as the landlord, like, opens the door, being like, Clark, are you in there? Apparently there are police behind her who just slam open the door, like, hey, Mr. Kent, let's have a chat. And they start looking around the room for anything specific. And basically it seems like they're in here not because they think he's Superman, but because he keeps on writing all these super critical pieces about Mr. Glenn Morgan from issue 1. And because I guess he owns the police, he's able to just harass whoever he wants. So they get into a little verbal argument, and Clark's just like, me? I couldn't possibly know Superman. I'm just here to fight for the right thing. And he makes a few points to tell them how completely off their rocker they are. And they don't find anything, but as they're leaving, the landlord saw that they were about to go through his gym bag, and she took out the Superman gear, and he's like, okay, so you're Superman. And Clark's like, but then we never get the resolution of that. So we cut to a diner where Clark's having lunch with Jimmy, and basically they're just talking about, like, man, Mr. Glenn Morgan is so evil and bad, but he's using his control over the media to make Superman out to be this villain, and it's distracting from the story that Clark Kent put out there of Mr. Glenn Morgan being evil and bad. And Jimmy's like, hey, by the way, Lois is going to show up. They're going to try to take you over to the Daily Planet from your current place, which is the Star. So, you know, olive branch, maybe go with it, because the Daily Planet's a big thing. It's like, dude, it's owned by Mr. Glenn Morgan. That is the exact opposite thing I want to do. So, again, no resolution to that. We get what I can only assume is a montage, because it's just a bunch of seemingly random stuff of people on TV talking about how bad Superman is. And then Clark's talking to his editor saying, like, oh, Mr. Glenn Morgan, like, what am I supposed to do now? And he tells him to go to some factory where they're making, they're going to be replacing the subway system because of the accident that happened in issue 1. And Mr. Glenn Morgan, of course, won the bid. So he's going to be replacing it with a brand new robot setup that's all automated. And then we see him dressed up as Superman. Girl's trying to get her cat down from a tree. A truck's about to run into her. Superman stops the truck, grabs the cat, and is like, oh, be more careful next time. The girl and the cat both freak out, and then people start throwing bottles and bricks at Superman. He throws his Superman gear into a trash can and says, sorry, Mom, Pa, I failed. So I guess that's the end of Superman. Picking up with the factory that's making the robot workers. Clark Kent's talking to the foreman, and he's like, oh, yes, we've done such amazing things here at the robot factory. And Clark's like, but what about the fact that, you know, there's a strike outside and all the job losses because you're making automated stuff, so people are upset they're losing their jobs. And he's like, wait a minute, I thought this was going to be a puff piece. You're not as nearly as nice as those other reporters. And we see that Lois Lane is there with Jimmy, and they're not happy to see each other. But as they're starting to fight and about to get kicked out by security, that same robot voice from Krypton starts talking through these subway robots, and nobody knows what's going on. They say the exact same things. If your planet's database has been copied and filed in advance of imminent destruction and extinction of all life, Terminauts will preserve significant artifacts. Then we cut to Sergeant Corbin, who you may remember from last issue. He's like, nope, I want to be the Steel Soldier. I'm going to do this for Lois so that she stops crushing on Superman and crushes on me instead. And he starts getting doused with what I can only assume is kryptonite because it's all green. But he's like, okay, this kind of hurts. This is ow, ow, ow. And then the robot voice starts coming through his own voice. And he's now the human embodiment of this alien consciousness. And he says, like, I am the voice of the colony of Collector World. He grabs some scientists and throws them away. And Lex is immediately there. He's like, hi, hey, Lex Luthor, we talked on the phone. I held up my end of the deal. So can you go ahead and keep up my end of the deal? And the robot is like, oh, okay, you held up your... Where's Superman? And that's how we end the issue. I like it. It's good. But dear Lord, this thing moves faster than a speeding bullet. I know what I said. It moved through literally from the dawn of Superman in flashback form to him quitting because it's just not working out. Like, the whole gambit's covered here. And the one place it feels like it moves really slowly is the police investigating, because that lasts for a good 4 pages. And honestly, it didn't... I get it. It kind of explored a little bit more of like this version of Superman being a bit more standoffy, but I'm still not totally in on it. But no, it's good. It's a solid issue. I'm giving this one a 7.5 as well. Art, pretty good all throughout. There are a couple issues here and there, but for the most part, it's a fine-looking issue. I couldn't tell where the art changed between Rags Morales and Gene Ha, so that's something at least. Maybe it was the Krypton, because that's purposely given a different look, though. But either way, it's a good issue. I just slow it down a little, Grant. Just a tiny little bit. Red Lanterns number 3, written by Peter Milligan, art by Ed Benes. Where we last left off, Atrocitus had decided that he needs a second in command, but who could he possibly choose? This issue begins with, he's already chosen and is already throwing them into the blood pit. He chose Bleeze, if it isn't evident by the cover of this issue. Bleeze is thrown into the blood pit, which will apparently rewire her brain, make her smarter, or at least as smart as she was, I guess, and be able to talk in complete sentences. And so this goes on for 3 pages where Atrocitus is like, oh, all the other lanterns, they're filled with nothing but self-anger, they're just blind fury. But now Bleeze is descending into the bottom of this blood ocean. She's getting all of her hate and rage more under control. She's getting her old memories back, and now she remembers why she was so angry. She was once a beautiful woman on some planet where everyone basically looks like blue-skinned angels, and some Yellow Lantern came up, killed, I think, her mother, and then ripped off her wings after also doing some other less PG-13 things. And so then we cut back to Earth for the story that I believe was last updated at the end of issue 1, where one of the guys is upset that his grandfather died. He's about to throw a Molotov at the guy who he knows did it, but again, I don't know if he knows. He throws it at the guy's house, and basically his brother comes in. His brother's name is Jack, and he's like, hey, dude, you're going to end up in prison. Stop with the uncontrolled anger. And the brother, who I genuinely don't remember his name, and they don't mention it in here, so I'm not going to bother with it, is like, dude, I know you're just as angry as I am, but you just refuse to show it. You're a coward, and you won't admit it to yourself. And then we're done with that. So then we cut back to Bleeze coming out of Blood Ocean, and Bleeze is like, okay, kind of pissed off that you put me in the ocean without my permission. I get that I couldn't really give permission, but consent is 2/3 of the law. And clearly you need something, though, or else you would never do it. What's up? And she basically says, okay, I need a second in command. I need someone who's going to help me get righteous fury throughout the universe. And she's like, no, I'm in too much pain now. I'm hurt and I'm wounded and I'm of no use to bring together a corps. And he's like, cool, all right, well, we're going to have to get you over that. So they go back to her home planet, and she's like, well, I really don't want to be here, so what are we doing? And he's like, well, the person who ripped off your wings and did those less than PG-13 things to you? And she's like, yeah, I killed him already. And he's like, well, there's actually more of a backstory to that. And he reveals that the only reason that Yellow Lantern came to her in the first place was because there were 2 people who asked for her hand in marriage that she ever so politely declined with the phrase, you want my hand? Please, I would rather be buried alive and eaten by blind slugs than spend one night with you. So they were a little bit bitter, and they sent this Yellow Lantern in her direction saying how she would never get with a Yellow Lantern so beneath her. So it was, the Yellow Lantern getting his pride back. I don't know. Everyone sucks in this story. But basically, Atrocitus lets her know that these people exist, and she's like, all right, cool. Let's go take care of that. But first, we need to make a pit stop. And they go to the place where Bleeze's mother is buried, or at least interred. And Atrocitus is like, are you kidding? We're not going to... God damn it, won't you just listen to me, Bleeze? And Bleeze is like, hey, you care about... The whole reason you're doing this is for your dead family. At least let me have this. And Atrocitus is like, fine, take a minute. And she walks up to her mother's corpse and is like, hey, it's your daughter. And she spits a loogie on her face and says, all this is because you wanted me to get married so badly. You suck, Mom. And then they leave. So they find their way to the place where these suitors are. They start crashing through all the security because I guess they're rich. And they're like, I don't know how she managed to connect us with that Yellow Lantern guy, but we should probably leave. And as they're about to leave, they both bust in. They rip off one of the guy's heads, and the other one is begging for mercy. And Bleeze is like, okay, I'll spare you. And Atrocitus is like, excuse me? And Bleeze is like, oh, but I will come back for you. Like, you will have to live in fear every day that I will be coming back for your head. You will always be looking over your shoulder. And Atrocitus is like, no! And he stabs the guy through the stomach, and it's like, that's not how we don't do things subtly. We're giant hulking red lanterns. And she's like, well, then you may as well have just not given back my intellect, you prick. So anyway, now that her thing is done, she goes back to the planet. She takes all the ravenous red lanterns, calms them down, and is like, all right, we're all gonna, come on, stop your ravenous stuff. We're gonna all work here for a common goal. And Atrocitus is like, all right, cool, good, glad this is, wait a minute, because Bleeze looks way too, like, self-confident about all this, and she's like, did she plan that? Did she plan all of this? The whole me throwing her in the, she didn't, no, did she? And that's where it leaves off, as Atrocitus is basically like, Bleeze might be more trouble than I actually thought she would be. Just going to point out there, because of Bleeze's more risque outfit, this last panel is just her ass. It's just her ass. Nothing else. Okay. This was good. So far, these Red Lantern issues have all felt pretty standalone, all things considered. Like, yes, there is a through line, but like each one is their own beat. Like, there's no real while there is a cliffhanger, more or less, it's such a mild cliffhanger that it genuinely doesn't feel like, we're moving the same story forward. Like the fact that the cliffhanger for issue 2 is, which one will I pick? And then he's not only has he already decided, he's already done it. He's already thrown them into the blood pit. It just feels a little bit disconnected. Not that that's a bad thing inherently, but it is something to be aware of. Overall, I did really like this issue. There are some flaws to it, though. The fact that it just felt like, okay, well, we're just kind of introducing Bleeze, so we just have to give her more of a backstory, and so that's what they just created, 2 characters out of nowhere of like, no, these were the people who were actually responsible for your pain. I guess. It feels a bit lazy to me, but I guess it's fine. I do like the rivalry setting up between Atrocitus and Bleeze. I think it's going to go good places. Art-wise, it's fine. It's very good. I can't complain about anything. Very visceral at times. So I'm going to go ahead and give this one a 6.5. And yeah, I mean, it's Red Lanterns. I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes, because it's basically the creation of a new core story, which I'm interested in, considering I never read the entire formation of every other core. Green Arrow number 3, written by J.T. Krul, art by Dan Jurgens, co-plotted by both of them, and believe it or not, I think this is the last issue of the arc, like, already. I didn't expect to get to one of these so soon, but hey, where we last left off, Green Arrow was fighting against Rush and the gang, and they were just being live streamed to the whole world. And this issue just picks up with that, with Rush being like, hey, everyone out there in streaming land, watch Green Arrow die. And Green Arrow's, he's fighting down the whole gang. It seems like impossible odds, but of course he jumps into it and gets into the fight. And they make sure to make a point of how everyone watching, like, is rooting for Rush and is against Green Arrow and wants blood and violence and death and... Okay, anyway, it's just basically one extended fight scene for most of it. Bits happen. There are beats. He loses his quiver in one of the people's attacks, catches on fire, and he's like, okay, well, you know where I am. Can you shut off the lights, and I'll shut off theirs? And he fires off like a sonic arrow as the lights are being worked on to be taken out. He's just coming up the plan as he go. He attacks a couple of them. The one dude back at base, Jax, I think. I'm trying to remember their names, but they are so unimportant. Jax says, like, hey, beneath your feet there's a small cellar. If you drop them down into it, you can use the inflatable arrows that we introduced last issue to take them out of the game. And he does that, and it works, and they banter for a bit. We cut back really quickly to the office where Emerson is sad or distressed that Ollie isn't answering any of his calls, and then I guess he ruminates over the fact that he's not living up to his full potential over a photo of possibly Oliver and his father, or Emerson and his father. I don't know. I have no clue what's happening in this scene. And we cut back to the fight. Once again, they're still fighting. They get some heat signatures to fight him in the dark, and then they're like, all right, well, we're taking this outside so we can get some natural light. And so they go outside. Dude with telekinesis is the one who's controlling all the cameras. He's like having them all float around cinematically or whatever. And Green Arrow's like, okay, well, if I take him out, there's no more show, so let's aim for that. And he shoots an arrow at the dude with telekinesis. He just deflects it because he's like, dude, I have telekinesis. Seriously? You think that would work? And he's like, oh, well, you just deflected it towards that tank of compressed gas. I do like how he says it. He says, no, wait, you're sending it right into the tank. It's like purposely deadpan. It explodes, take out the telekinesis guy. Rush picks up a camera, throws it at Green Arrow. Literally says, dude, I knew this was going to be epic. So, they get into a fight. And then finally Green Arrow, he pulls out 2 arrows at once. While he starts monologuing, he's like, this is what you wanted. He's monologuing to the literal audience, the literal live stream audience, where he's saying, this is what you wanted, isn't it? What you clicked over for? Some entertainment, a guilty pleasure? Anybody who's watching this video right now, in your home, at work, wherever you are, you're to blame. You're guilty. So anyway, he fires off some arrows, one of which is a sedative. He lands it in Rush's neck, and then he crushes the camera, saying, don't give people that kind of power. They don't deserve it. Show's over. And then I guess Rush and the gang all go to jail. Meanwhile, it's a few days later. There are still people saying, man, Green Arrow, he sucks. We will wait for #we'll wait for Rush. And I'm like, anyway, there's that Q show that I guess Emerson's been trying to get him to talk at for this entire time. Ollie is there, and he makes, again, a whole monologue about, we need to add to the human experience. Our technology isn't... I'm not here to sell you the latest app. I'm not here to sell you the coolest gadget. At the end of the day, it's about what we do with the technology that defines us. We have to be better. We have to do more, be more. And Emerson's like, okay, next time, could you maybe, I don't know, not say that our entire technology line is useless? And he's like, that's not what I was going for. He's like, well, it sounds like it was. You suck, Ollie. I hate you. And this one girl who has been around, Adrian, I think she was in issue 1 maybe, she steps up to defend Ollie. But Emerson's not having it. He's like, he is capable of so much, and he's not living up to it, and that's what pisses me off, because he's lazy, and he's not taking this seriously. He's just a bum. And then we see him gearing up his Green Arrow, and it's showing that, if only Emerson knew. And then we get one quick little epilogue thing where somebody's watching his monologue at Q-Core, and they shoot out the TV and says, that's the thing about a past, Mr. Queen. It tends to catch up to you. And it's this young woman with guns, and then this dude who's huge and seems to be shot and bleeding and burned, but he's just okay with it. And he's like, we're going to take out Oliver Queen and make his life so much worse. Mwahaha. As this bar that they're sitting in is filled with burned husks of corpses. And that's the end of the arc, as far as I can tell. I didn't like it, if that wasn't clear. Oh, boy. Okay, so I didn't mind the art so much in this last one, because they actually started, being decent. But, good Lord. It's not a bad moral. Don't give bad people a platform. I'm okay with that moral. It's not like it's offensive to me as a moral, but it's just how ham-fisted it is. He's literally monologuing. Not in narration boxes to us as the audience, these are his personal thoughts that we're just privy to. No, he is actively speaking to the audience and saying, hey, you're to blame for all the bad people. Oh, boy. I'm giving this one a 3.5, this particular issue. Just because, especially because it happened so quickly, it feels like nothing mattered out of all of it. You just monologued and then shot him with an arrow. Is this just going to be it? Is this just how you're not setting me up with confidence for anything moving forward in this run? That it's just not going to be fling, and that's why we always pick up our litter. No. 3.5. Do better. Be more. Justice League International number 3, written by Dan Jurgens, art by Aaron Lopresti. We last left off with the team basically deciding, okay, we got to go fight these things, and then an alien out in space. And by these things, I mean the 4 giant Goliaths that appeared all over the world. This issue picks up with them, I guess, enacting the plan. And they're sitting outside the Hall of Justice, the burned down Hall of Justice, mind you, the 2 UN coordinators, and they're like, wow, this has just not worked at all. My career is in flames. The Justice League have failed in their one mission so far, and they're going out to fight some things that probably are going to kill them. Things aren't working out for me, are they? And then we see the Booster's plan is that, okay, these things came out of the ground, which means they were down there somewhere. So one person will distract the giant robots. We'll split into teams of 2. One person will distract each of the 4 giant robots, and the other person will go down underground and see what's inside the cavern. And we'll just do some investigating that way, see if there's some way to stop them. So this issue is literally just showing everyone enacting the plan. Like this, it's nothing else but that. So Booster and Batman are teamed up. They do the plan. Batman gets under. Booster follows soon after. They go to Russia. Rocket Red and Ice, they have a short little talk about how Rocket Red is kind of interested in fire and might give that a shot. I don't know. And then they do the thing. They go down under. When they go down under, though, we see that there are those little stone gremlin things, I think, that made an appearance in issue 1. Yeah. So those little stone gremlin things are there to capture them. And then we cut to back into the van real quick, actually, and the UN guy is getting a call saying, like, hey, just wanted to let you know something's happening. And the guy's like, is there a 5th giant robot out there? He's like, no, actually, there's a giant spaceship that just entered Earth's airspace. And he's like, oh, dear Lord, is it too much to ask for just one crisis at a time? But Guy Gardner's standing literally outside the van with, a hearing equipment construct, and he's like, well, guess that's why they need me. So he flies off towards the spaceship. Cut to South Africa. Fire and Vixen are there. Fire's distracting. Vixen badgers her way down under the ground. When they get down there, they're ambushed by all these little rock golem things, and they're immediately beaten and carried off. And then Canada, where the last one is, we have Iron General in whatever, and I forget her name, but the British one, who's not very good at fighting. And she even makes that point. She has a little conversation saying, like, hey, I'm just here for the PR. I didn't actually think we'd do any, major Earth-saving fighting stuff. And Iron General's like, well, it's not your fault. You weren't trained for this. All right. And they see that the giant has become active. It's shooting its laser beam up into the sky. So he's like, well, it looks like we don't need a distraction. And he grabs her. They dive down into a hole. And again, they're immediately attacked by those little rock golem things. The difference being is that they actually managed to get away. Iron General manages to save Godiva. That's her name. Godiva. And they start making their way down deeper into the cave. Cut back to Batman in Peru with Booster Gold. They come across this alien technology, this giant, vast orb of red swirling liquid or something. And they're like, okay, all right, well, this is definitely alien. Maybe it communicates with the other giants or some other thing. Let's go find out. Batman needs to get to the control panel. Booster has to hold off all the little rock gremlins. He's not doing so well. He makes the specific point that one of them has grabbed his junk, and it hurts. Never change, Booster. But then they say, okay, so someone out there is watching, and it's not another golem, it's someone out in space. So that's what Batman discovers. Meanwhile, we see all the lasers are triangulating into some massive ball of energy that's right above this spaceship. And guy goes up and he's like, all right, well, drills his way in, starts looking around, and as soon as the moment he arrives, he gets bashed in the head by the giant alien we saw at the end of issue 2. And the alien's like, a lantern? I expected more. You'll be one of my easier kills. As Guy is just unconscious face down on the ground. And that's where we end, with seemingly everything going wrong, as these issues always end. I didn't dislike it. It was a fine little thing. My biggest issue is the fact that all 4 people did the exact same thing. It's a character building issue more than anything else, but like the character they build is Vixen is here like for her people's sake. Godiva doesn't know how to fight. Red Rocket wants to get with fire. Like, it's not deep characterization. It's very much just like and here's a little fact. It's a flash fact that's just popping up and saying like, by the way, did you know? But no, it's nothing that fantastic, but it is forwarding the story because the Giants are activating and Guy's back and he's on the ship. So it is moving it forward. It's just nothing super huge to write home about. I'm going to give this one a 5.5. It's fine. It's nothing great. It's got its issues. I just wish that maybe we didn't just show that it happened to one of them and then do quick cuts to the other one. But instead they showed how did they distract them each time? How did the person get down in the hole each time? How did the other person follow? What did they find? How did they fight the rock island? For each one. It's like, that's not necessary. Just show us one example, show us the template, and then show us the variations thereof. We can fill in the gaps to assume that fire probably distracted the giant thing with fire. Done. But no, 5.5. I'm still wanting to see where it goes at least, so that's something. But I think that's more just a sunk cost than me actually being that interested. Men of War number 3, written by Ivan Brandon, art by Tom Derenick. Last issue with Sergeant Rock being picked up way above the earth by some alien superhero lady, and then a senator they were trying to protect died, and there might be a mole inside their union. I guess. This issue doesn't really cover much of any of that as far as I can tell. But we open up with a flash forward. It's shots between the Easy Company and, as far as I can tell, this entire town is here, all with guns. And Sergeant Rock is waxing poetically about, it makes a sort of music, all the guns being fired. Every fire has 100 answers and blah, blah, blah. But point being is they're outnumbered and this will be the death of him. Flashback how we get here. So they're inside some super spy-looking Navy submarine, and they're going over the mission where the entire mission is they go to this port, they blow up a ship, and then they take out 11 armed men that are defending it or whatever. That's it. They're outside of Djibouti. Sergeant Rock is like, all right, so, seems like an easy mission, but don't get cocky. It can easily go wrong in 100 different ways. So they go down, diving under the water. They get up next to the warship. They plant a mine that's on a timer on it. And then, as soon as they do, the warship starts moving, which it definitely should not be doing. They were like, nope, this thing is supposed to be parked here this entire time. So the warship starts moving away, and they're like, all right, well, we're in trouble because that shouldn't have gone anywhere. They're like, all right, well, we got to get on the beach because clearly out here we are literally sitting ducks. So there's another ship coming up to close the gap. Apparently whoever moved the ship, even the people at the docks weren't aware of. So they were like, okay, get your guns, start firing at it. So they start trying to fire at the ship. These two ships collide with each other. Again, not entirely sure as to why, but it makes for a cool visual. And then the mine goes off, and both the ships explode. Everyone goes running, but the Easy Company makes their way onto the coast, and they start trying to make their way somewhere. I'm not even sure they know where they're going, honestly, because everything went to hell. And basically, once they're spotted, fire starts coming from everywhere, like actual just live rounds, not fire. Every time one man gets shot down, 10 more show up with guns, and they're on the defensive. They've set up a barricade, and they're just shooting at everyone who comes in. Finally, an RPG comes and basically knocks down their barricade. They're down to the last clip. It's where we were at the intro. And they're like, all right, there's no way out of this. We're screwed. But Sergeant Rock doesn't see it as a, he's not sitting there like counting his last minutes, thinking of his mother or anything like that. He's just trying to figure out, why did that boat move? Like, that shouldn't have happened. There's a man who's apparently in charge. He steps forward, gives a sigh, raises his hand up, and then there's helicopters that start showing up, and everyone else raises their guns at the Easy Company. Meanwhile, there's a dude named Corba, Private Corba, whose hands start glowing red, and he's like, Sergeant Rock, can I be excused? And he's like, no, you may not. Shut up. Take it like a man. And as they're about to go into one last stand, and like they start charging with their knives, and the guys have their guns raised, the dude who's glowing red just explodes out with energy. And the helicopters crash into each other in a brilliant, fiery explosion. And that's where we end with, what? I think that I said this about the last issue as well, but these issues are very much like a standalone just series of events. Like, I didn't feel like anything that we just covered here dealt with anything in the last issue. And I didn't feel like anything in the last issue dealt with issue 1. It's just like, okay, here's the mission, here's how it all goes wrong, here's how we still manage to get out. Fine, I guess, but it's just very... I don't know where we're moving with this story yet, if that makes any sense. Like, if this is the whole thing, if it's just a collection of missions, fine. But it seemed like at the end of issue 2, they were setting up this, like, this mole in the unit or this traitor or something like that. They set up a whole thing of, like, this, now we've got a superpowered member of the team. Is that something we're dealing with? Is he the mole? Is he not? He seemed to be unaware of his own powers. So, I don't know. I have no idea where this is going. All I can tell you is most of this is told through a sort of poetical narration. It's very well done. The writing is very brilliantly told. It leaves the art to do whatever it wants, and it does it very well. I don't have much complaint about the art at all. The fact that it's a fight scene with a bunch of guns instead of like colorful superheroes punching each other, it does a very good job at allowing me to keep track of who the good guys are, who the bad guys are, where our main character is. It does a good job at all that. And it's very grungy and gritty to match the war tone as well. So overall, though, I'm going to give this one a 7. It's just solid. My only real complaint is we're 3 issues in now, and I'm not entirely sure what the plot is. If it's just following around Sergeant Rock, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But it seems like they keep teasing that there's something larger going on. And I either want confirmation or a full negative on that, because otherwise I'm going to keep expecting it, and I'm going to keep being a little bit let down whenever it's not answered. O.M.A.C, number 3, written by Dan DiDio and Keith Giffen, art by Keith Giffen. We last left off with Kevin being sent to Shreveport by Brother Eye, and Brother Eye making contact with Checkmate, and also Maxwell Lord, who is in charge of that. All of that meaning absolutely nothing to me. We pick up in Shreveport, where he's at an ATM, and he's like, dude, I don't have anything. I don't have any ID or anything like that. How am I supposed to get money? And Brother Eye's like, oh, I'll take care of that. And he just makes the ATM start spitting out money. Immediately, a cop pulls up, and he's like, this isn't helpful, Brother Eye. And he tries to explain. The cop's like, look, they just started doing that. I didn't touch it. You can have all the money. I'm not going to do anything. And the cop fires off. It's definitely a gun. Like, he definitely has just a gun. But it seems to be a taser once he fires it. So he's tased. So Kevin's off the table because they recognize he has a Homeland Security, like, this guy's a terrorist. If you see him, no mercy. We get a cut to the girlfriend's house, Jody Robbins. Kevin tries calling her from prison. And he's like, hey, they think I'm a terrorist. I'm here at a prison. You're going to have to help me. And the girlfriend's like, what did you get yourself into? He's like, it's not me, I swear it's... And then one of the guards is like, no activating any sleeper agents on my watch. Get back to your cell. He's like, okay, I need a lawyer. He's like, you had your phone call. Get back to your cell. one of the cellmates tells him how, oh yes, we've been waiting on you. The warden had his brain fried a while back by him, and he's been waiting for the both of you, whoever both of you is. Basically, it's just some dude who I guess was a professor or something. And I'll just read off exactly what it said. When the doc got here, the doc's the dude, he was supposed to study the most violent cases, try and find ways to suppress their urges. The warden didn't like what he was doing, put a stop to it. Then the doc experimented on himself and put a stop to the warden. There you go. And his name is Professor Arus, a.k.a. the Sci-Fi Man. P-S-I-F-I. Man. He's got this stupid-looking helmet on in order to not get sensory overload or something like that. And he's like, okay, so you look like a man, but you definitely have something inside you. I believe it's Brother Eye. Let me take a look at that. And I think he may have a way to trigger the O.M.A.C transformation, because he starts transforming. And then we get a cutaway to Brother Eye talking to Maxwell Lord. And he's like, okay, something's going on with Kevin. So we're done talking, Maxwell. Don't come after me. Don't you do it. Don't you do it, Maxwell. And he's like, hey, we're good. No problem. Bye. And Brother Eye goes to check on Kevin as Maxwell Lord immediately is like, cool, all right. So here's my team of ace combatants who are going to go after him. I'll teleport you to his location of an energy signal, whatever. We got back to O.M.A.C, who I guess is now stuck mid-transformation by the Sci-Fi Man, who takes off his helmet, and he's like, well, now that I can see inside of you, because you're in mid-transformation, I can find out exactly what you are. He goes inside, and he's like, wow, this actually, yes, alien technology, but I don't know, kind of boring overall. Which I concur completely, Sci-Fi Man. And Brother Eye talks to him, and he's like, oh, actually, hi, I'm the one who set up this meeting. I'm Brother Eye. I've kept an eye on you because you are growing increasingly dangerous, and you must be stopped. And Brother Eye's like, okay, well, you can't stop me. You're not even a human. He's like, oh, thank you. I'll take that as a compliment. By the way, O.M.A.C is done transforming. And he manages to kick Sci-Fi Man out of his consciousness and just throw him across the room. He's like, you may be smart, but you're not strong as O.M.A.C. And then I swear I don't know what happens, but he's got this brain that's also partially tail coming out of his head. And he just whips him with the back of his brain tail. And it does something? I don't know. Anyway, the checkmate agents arrive, and they're like, okay, well, there's a bunch of prisoners here. Would have been nice to know we were going to a jail. Time to pull out the big weapons. And they pull out something called ambient tech, which can use the electrons in the air to make weapons. I don't know. I don't care. Fires off some shots to take care of the prisoners. They're looking for O.M.A.C. Meanwhile, O.M.A.C crashes into the room fighting Sci-Fi Man. They don't give a crap about the Sci-Fi Man, so they just try to take care of O.M.A.C. O.M.A.C can't break out of the ambient tech, and Brother Eye's like, well, you shouldn't have let them get it around you. That's your fault. But I'll give you an energy surge so you can get out. So he breaks him out. He starts getting his shit wrecked by the ambient tech, and Brother Eye just keeps on giving him a hard time. He's like, this is unacceptable. You are the ultimate weapon, and you're losing to some guys pulling weapons out of thin air. What do you have to say to yourself? And O.M.A.C's like, shut up. Literally, he just yells, shut up, as he does a Hulk smash on the ground, sends the checkmate agents flying, and he's like, all right, I guess that was kind of my fault. I'm gonna teleport you out now, and we will deal with this later. So he teleports out O.M.A.C, and Sci-Fi Man also got away by tricking a guy into thinking he's seeing a pretty girl hitchhiking and then stealing his car. And he leaves when he's like, oh, I need some time alone to plan because I need to learn everything about Brother Eye so O.M.A.C can be mine. And that's where we leave. I'm happy there's less narration. I'm happy not everything is being explained. I'm happy that I don't have to... So, don't get me wrong, at the beginning of, each little chapter, they have a little thing where they're like, oh, it's finally Saturday, and after a long, exhausting... yes, it's... There's a little bit of a just narration box, but I'm okay with that. It's the parts where it just interrupts in the middle of the story where it's like, okay, why do we need that? I'm glad that stopped. Art-wise... Maybe I'm just getting used to it, but it feels a little bit better. I think Sci-Fi Man looks pretty good, all things considered. Kevin doesn't look like a complete Neanderthal in every panel he's in. Don't get me wrong, he's still pretty close, but he's not as bad. No, art, I think, is mildly improving. Writing is definitely improving. So I'm going to go ahead and give this one just a 5. It's average. It still hasn't taken a step into becoming good, but it's at least taking a step out of being bad. So I'm giving it a 5. Hopefully they can continue the upward trend, but I am not holding my breath on that one. Stormwatch, number 3, written by Paul Cornell, art by Miguel Sepulveda. We last left off with, I don't know, a whole bunch of plot lines all wrapping, but the big thing is that the moon was sending down meteors. One of them crashed into a cornfield and became this giant thing. This issue picks up with, I guess, shortly afterwards. Stormwatch is arguing about, okay, what to do next, and just getting a little bit of a recap on the two dumbest ones there. Projectionist is complaining that all the media so desperately wants to report on the fact that the asteroids are coming and crashing into them, and how there's some monster in Colorado. And Jack, the city talking guy, is just sitting there meditating, and we see inside of his consciousness him talking to the spirits of cities. Paris being this fashionista looking like beautiful woman, Metropolis being this beautiful woman dressed in like a visual business casual sort of look, and Gotham, which is a creepy gargoyle thing. Fits the theme. And Jack is like, okay, so why did all these meteors are targeted at major cities? Why did one of them land in nowhere, Colorado? And they're like, oh, but there was a city there, Jack, and it was beautiful and it was great. And then Gotham chimes in, is like, no, don't listen to them. It sucked. It was crazy. Listen to me, Gotham. I'm clearly trustworthy. And for some reason, Jack does. So he's like, all right, well, they say there's a city there. I thrive in cities, so I've got a plan. Meanwhile, the one dude in charge, who I'm forgetting his name, but, you know, the dude in charge, Adam, he tells Apollo, he's like, hey, Apollo, look, you're super strong and stuff like that. Could you go ahead and, you know, stop the meteors from coming down and hitting us? Just go up there and punch them to pieces. And Apollo's like, fine, but I'm not doing it because I'm part of your team. I'm doing it because they're aimed at my planet. Then we cut back to the moon, where Harry is still there absorbing the alien consciousness of the moon. I think he's done. I think he just wrapped up. He's like, haha, you thought you could beat a human, but I have bested you, because not only I'm not just a swordsman, my true power is I can fool anyone. Here I thought it was just people, but apparently aliens too. And he takes his sword and he slashes open the giant eye, because why not? And he looks positively manic when he does it. The engineer and Jenny Q show up, and he's like, all right, cool. So I'm glad that we can get out of here. He gives engineer a kiss, so I guess they're a thing. And as they get out, he gives kind of like a little smirk, which makes me think he might be evil now, especially with the whole manically slashing open the alien consciousness's eye, but whatever. Back to Apollo. He's emitting radio waves to speak on the frequency of their comms, because I guess that's a thing he can do. And he's just punching up meteorites, and he's like, oh, I'm going to send him into the sun. Cut back to Stormwatch HQ. They're looking at the monster that's in Colorado. And it's like, all right, well, as long as we don't allow any more monsters to land, this is the only one we got to deal with. The projectionist is blocking all the media from reporting on it. Justice League hasn't shown up. Oh, here's Jenny, Engineer, and Harry. All right, everyone, let's go. We're going to Colorado. Back to Apollo. Apollo sees this massive planet-ending size meteor, and he's like, guys, I don't think I can deal with this one. Cut back to Colorado. They teleport in. They didn't really understand the scale of this monster when they saw it on their TVs, but they were like, okay, well, I guess we got a deal. Cut back to Apollo again. He's like, I'm going to build up all the energy I have because I'm powered by raw sunlight out here in space, and I'm going to blow that thing to smithereens. He's literally talking to himself. Like, no one's paying any attention to him. So Jack gets down, and he's like, I always get sick when I'm not in the city, and I'm not sick, so that must mean there is technically a city here. Let me try to communicate with it. And everyone's like, all right, here's the plan. Protect Jack. And then back at Stormwatch, Projectionist is there, and I get they're trying to give her a moment, but it's like, everybody wants to report and tweet about what's happening, and I'll use all of my power to make sure that doesn't happen. And it's like, you do you, buddy. Anyway, so then we get a brief explanation on Jenny Q's power because Midnighter's curious. It's just she has the power currently of dark energy because that's what the scientific knowledge is for the century, I guess. So they set up some sort of grid to try to contain the monster, but it's absorbing literally everything they throw at it. So they have to come up with some other sort of plan. Apollo blows up the the world-ending meteorite and then starts crashing down to Earth. Again, no one really cares. He's just doing his own thing. Jack's talking to the city that supposedly doesn't exist, and he's like, come on, you gotta wake up. I'm not trying to hurt you, but you gotta, whatever city is there, you gotta fight to survive or whatever. And then Midnighter comes in, and he's like, guys, you gotta listen to me. I know I'm not really a member of the team, but my power is that I know, like, how to fight anything, and I know, like, I can see kind of like 3 moves ahead sort of thing. And he's absorbing all your stuff, and you're not gonna kill him that way, and also he's about to bum rush you and absorb every last one of you. And then that thing happens. So they're absorbed into the body of this giant monster. All of their powers now belong to it, and Midnighter's the only one that can stop them. End issue. I'm glad that all the plots have finally converged. I mean, yes, they sent Apollo completely out to do whatever else, but everyone is pretty much in one spot dealing with one thing, and I'm so happy for that because, dear Lord, it was just too much for too long there. I love the art. The art's fantastic. There's a lot of, like, After Effects, like a lot of computer stuff being added on here. So I don't know if you feel that there's some purity in hand-drawn art. I think you might hate this, but I don't have that same notion. I think it's all very well done. It's done in a way that only adds to what's already there. Strangely enough, I think I opened up this thinking that Jack was the dumbest thing of all time, and Projectionist was a close second. Now I'm willing to give Jack more of a benefit. Now Projectionist is the dumbest thing of all time. Like, oh no, I stopped everyone from... Like, how does that even work? Does it just, like, hold up the server network? Like, does it stop people from pressing send? Don't people realize that their tweets aren't being posted? I don't know. As for me, this is okay. It's a 6 for me. The art's really pulling most of the work. Like, World End, I get the entire first point of this arc is to say, like, yes, we deal with, like, the stuff that's even beyond the Justice League or whatever. And fine, I get that. But the fact that Justice League is dealing with, like, parademons and, like, different dimensions and hell and stuff like that, and these guys are just dealing with Moon Alien, I'm not sure it really is that different yet. I'm looking to see why, but right now it just seems like it's just a different Justice League. That's not quite as interesting because the characters are Projectionist and the Jack guy. So yeah, 6 for me right now. Hopefully it'll improve. How do you not understand how this social media thing works? I don't understand that part. Hawk and Dove number 3, written by Sterling Gates, art by Rob Liefeld. We last left off with Condor and Swan crashing some sort of gala or something and taking both Hawk's father and the President of the United States at the time hostage. This issue picks up pretty much right after, and yeah, President's still being held hostage, and Condor's making jabs about, like, oh, how do you like your elected officials, spayed or neutered? Hawk and Dove immediately jump into action, despite the fact Hawk has to specifically put down, like, I didn't vote for this guy, but he's still our president, gosh darn it. And so the fight breaks out between Hawk and Condor and Dove and Swan. So Hawk and Condor, they're just throwing themselves through walls and shouting at each other constantly. Condor reveals that basically the only reason they're here is in order to draw out Hawk and Dove in order to fight them. They don't actually give a crap about the president or Hawk's dad. It is revealed later on in the issue that Condor does know Hank's identity, like he knows Hawk's true identity. So I guess that's why they chose the dad, or maybe they came for the president. I don't know. Whatever. Point being is that Condor's got this thing as Secret Service agents come up where he's able to just turn his teeth super sharp and bite clean through their necks, like their head falling off. And he does this multiple times, and he's like, glad to have a snack. So yeah, it's just him and Hawk fighting for a while. Hank's father is being held hostage by Swan. Dove comes in and it's like, hey, all right, so who are you guys? What are we going to do? More talking, less fighting, because that's who they are. And she lets in on a couple of things of there's a circle and how Hawk and Dove are the jokes of like people in the circle. And she's like, all right. And Swan is like, all right, enough fighting. And she throws Hank's dad to the side, starts breathing fire, and then like throws fire bolts at Dove, and then she just disappears. And then there's this music that's echoing throughout, and that's apparently the swan song that will lead to Dove's death. So what does she do? She's like, I guess I should follow the music, because that's something you should do when it says it's literally leading to your death. Back to the fight between Condor and Hawk. Actually, you know what? Skip that part, because literally nothing happens. There's an explosion. At one point, there's some rubble falling down, and Hank's dad protects the president from being crushed by it. Cut back to Dove, who's just trying to find Swan at this point. She's like, I'm not really unnerved. It's one thing about being the Avatar piece. I'm not that weirded out, so I don't know what you're trying to do. But Swan comes down and she kicks Dove in the back and claims that they're here to take their power for themselves. And she pulls out this giant sword thing. And she also makes the comments of like, oh, I know that you don't love Hawk. You already want to be rid of him. Which, yeah, no duh. Like, was that even a thing? I don't think that was supposed to... Anyway, she pulls out a sword and is like, oh, but don't worry. You won't have to deal with him anymore in a few minutes. And then we get Hank's dad waking up from unconsciousness as the President of the United States. It's just Obama. Like, it's just Obama. Is possessed by dead man. And he's like, hey, you seen Dove? The president was unconscious so I figured I could just use his body while he's not using it. So he pushes the rubble off of Hank's dad. Once again, Hawk is still fighting Condor, and a dead man shows up, and he's like, he possesses a Secret Service agent, and he's like, hey, I'm here to help. What do you need me to do? And he's like, possess Condor. Like, take him out of this. Like, possess him and take over his body. So Dead Man goes inside of Condor's body, and he just sees this huge winged beast with fangs and green skin, and he's immediately just kicked back out of Condor's body. And we don't actually see Dead Man for the rest of the issue, but Condor makes the thing of like, oh, I guess he saw something he didn't like. Anyway, now I'm finally gonna kill you, Hawk. And he holds up Hawk by the scruff of his neck, unhinges his jaw into all those fangs, and then Dove shows up with the sword from Swan, like in that last panel that she was supposedly going to be stabbed by, and she stabs Condor. And then Condor, I don't even know what's happening here. He just starts glowing, he expels some energy, and then he turns into an old man. And Hawk is like, well, he's not too old to answer some questions, and I've got plenty. And that's where the issue ends. One thing I want to go back to real quick, though, is that when she stabs Condor with the sword, his mask is off, like it's gone. And previous panel it was on, and underneath it was just this, it was the thing the Dead Man saw, this green, scaly-looking creature with giant fangs. And then when we see him on the next panel and he starts glowing, his mask is back on and he looks just like normal Condor. So I don't know what in the hell that's supposed to be. I frankly have no clue. But for one panel, he just turns into a demon, and then we don't even talk about it. This was weird. This was a weird issue. I mean, we're not... it's definitely not done with the arc. It's definitely like the midway point where, they've had a fight. This is the whole fight issue, and they still need answers as to like what the bigger plot is, but like I don't know where we go from here, It's, if the dude's just an old man, then just like take him out. I don't know. Maybe that's just, they're superheroes. They can't do that, but still. It wasn't a terribly done issue. I like the art stuff. Okay, that's an over-exaggeration. I'm okay with the art stuff. Writing-wise, everybody's got puns constantly. Like, if they're in the kitchen, they're saying, like, oh, are you still hungry? How about we whip up something? And everyone's got puns all the time. Overall, I'm going to give this a 6. It's not offensively bad. It's not awful. I just have this general sense of malaise about it, where I'm like, okay, and like, fine. It's Hawk and Dove. Woo. Static Shock number 3, written by Scott McDaniel and John Rozum, art by Scott McDaniel. Last left off with Static being on a rooftop, being attacked by Virul for like the second issue in a row. This issue picks up right after that, and Virul has absorbed some of Static's energy, and so he starts replicating because he's literally just a living virus, and apparently Static's energy, it's all explained later, but I'm telling you now because I don't care later. It makes him replicate, and he has this urge to replicate, so that's a thing. Once Virul gets like knocked off the roof or whatever, the rest of the Power Rangers, the Slate Gang is what they're officially called, but they're just the Power Rangers, they start coming in to defend Virul. The NYPD shows up in helicopters, so they start unloading shots on Static. Static makes a shield to protect himself, and then the Slate Gang starts firing on the NYPD. Everyone just starts fighting, and like Static's defending himself on all fronts. And then they start going after the Slate Gang starts going after the NYPD, so he has to defend the cops while also taking out the Slate Gang. And then as soon as he's trying to save this helicopter from crashing, Slate Gang bails, and Static's just like, all right, well, I'm going to give the cops a slip and we'll get back to this later. And then we just say later that night, and he's coming back home. And his sister is awake watching a movie about someone who is a clone or something, and she tries convincing Static's like, that the other sister clone that still has not been properly introduced, and I'm still a little bit pissed about that, is not the real me, right? I'm the real me. You know that, right? I forget his real name. Virgil, that's it. And he's like, yeah, no doubt, you're the real Sharon. And then he walks out, and there's another one sitting on the stairs, and he's like, don't believe that copy. I'm your real sister, Virgil, and I genuinely couldn't care less. And then he's thinking about, like, all right, so now I've got to figure out how to get in touch with the Slate Gang. And he walks into his lunchroom, and there's a guy standing up at a table saying, I'm telling you, the Slate Gang rules this city. And it's like, that's convenient. So he talks to the guy. He shows him that he's tough because he tells him that he was at the Big Bang back in Dakota where he got his powers and all that. And he's like, yeah. Why don't you show me the Slate Gang? And I'd love to, because I rock for real. So they're apparently at some club down in Manhattan. He brought along a Static gear in a backpack. He didn't think that to get into the club he would have to be searched, so he's panicking about that. But someone's thrown out because they're drunk, and he's able to get away in the scuffle. He starts going up higher levels of the club because apparently it's only at like the penthouse levels that the people all hang out in, like the people he's looking for, Slate Gang. Finally, he gets up to one of the top levels, and they're up there doing some like computer hacking or something, and I guess they hacked into like Q pads, which I think are a Green Arrow thing, but I could not care less. And Static basically knocks out one of them and kidnaps her. Then we get this cutaway, this whole random fucking cutaway of Piranha and the Pale Man making some drug deal or something, where the dude making the deal with the Pale Man's like calling him all these clown names, and then finally he's like, oh wait, that's right, you look just like the Joker. And as he says that, Pale Man bashes him in the head, And then some dude, I don't even know who, he just shows up and he's like, yes, that guy was an idiot, but he worked for me, so thank you for not killing him. Anyway, take your drugs and go now. And then that scene just ends. I still don't know what happened. So we get back to Static and the girl he kidnapped, and he's like, all right, look, call up your guys, tell them no weapons, no whatever, and they can come pick you up at this location. It's the Shell Gate Power Station. And make sure that Virul guy isn't around. And she calls him and says, like, hey, no weapons, come unarmed, do not bring the heavy. And apparently the heavy is the code word to make sure they definitely do bring Virul. Then we get a conversation between Virul and I guess his handler, who's like, hey, Virul, you need to take care of Static now. He's like, I really want to absorb his essence. And it's like, that's creepy, Virul. But, yeah, you do you. Just make sure he doesn't know anything about the Dark Star, which I can't even remember if that's been brought up before, but it's brought up here. So Dark Star, and we got to make sure Static doesn't know anything about it. But maybe he already knows something about it because he took the girl hostage. But then the hostage person, the hostage call comes through, and she's like, hey, he called for you, Virul. Come on, you got to come with us. We're going to kill Static. So they go to the power station, and they all show up, and they are actually unarmed, but Virul is like, I don't know, 100 feet that way, and he's going to snipe him. Or at least that's the plan, but then as soon as he's in the crosshairs and they say to take the shot, Virul cancels the plan, drives up, and wants to absorb him by hand. So the Slate gang bail, he has to fight Virul again. He uses the entire power station electricity to just vaporize Virul, and he's left as nothing but a pile of sand. To which Static says, like, all right, well, guess that's dealt with, and he flies away. But of course the pile of sand starts morphing back into Virul. But that's where the issue ends. I don't even know what happened. I genuinely, I get the beats of it, but I swear to God this was just issue 2 again. Like, didn't we do this whole thing already? Where, he needs to get some information, he's looking around, he's doing... I swear to God we did all this. This feels like it's spinning its wheels so much, and I am losing interest with every page. And then we get that whole thing with Piranha and Pam. What? I don't even... okay. Also, this has a big cast of characters going on. You got the Slate gang, you got all these gang members, you got people at his school, you got Virgil, you got his family. You have so many characters in this. And nothing against Scott McDaniel's art for the most part, but all of his faces have the same sort of build to them. And it really gets noticeable when you have this many characters all given speaking parts. They all have the same, especially in the mouth. The mouth is drawn the same way for all of them. It's very distinct. I cannot put this at a 6 or higher. I'm gonna keep it at a 5.5 because I just what even? It's average. It's meh. It's whatever. What happened? That's all I want to know, because I feel like something more must have just happened than literally the thing that we've been doing for the past 2 issues already. But hey, who knows? Issue 4, second verse, same as the first. Animal Man, number 3, written by Jeff Lemire, art by Foreman. We last left Buddy and his daughter going into the red, and the Hunters 3 from the Rot had just possessed the bodies of a couple of zookeepers. This issue picks up with Buddy and his daughter, Maxine, and they are still descending into the red. Maxine seems to have no problem. She's just like, yeah, no, I come here all the time in my dreams. It's cool. We're all good. But Animal Man is losing it. He is morphing into 100 different very grotesque shapes that only Foreman could make. And he's like, oh, okay, baby, could you come back here and not let me die? And Maxine's like, oh, don't worry, Daddy, we're almost there. And he's like, where? And we flip the page and see I guess you'd call it the Parliament of the Red, if that's a thing. They are also known as the Totems. It's all the previous animal men. So their spirits are hanging out here. We cut back to the Hunters 3. They made the trip over to Buddy's house, but, it was kind of a long trip, and they can only keep these bodies decent looking for so long, so they're already falling apart at the seams. But they can tell that Buddy and Maxine are not there. They're not in the house. It's only the wife and the son. So the two of the hunters go into the red in order to stop Buddy and Maxine from doing whatever they're doing. And one of them stays behind because they're like, hey, the mom already put out one avatar of the red. Maybe she'll be useful in another way. So he's going to go after her. Then we get back into the red, and basically we get like a major retcon as to how Animal Man was, is that he was never... You would think he's an avatar of the red, but he wasn't. His original backstory is he was given these animal powers by aliens, but as it turns out, the actual story is that Maxine was always like the prophesized one, the one that would become the savior of the red, and Animal Man was just given powers to protect her, to make sure that she was able to get to her destiny. And the whole alien thing was just because it's a hell of a lot easier than explaining whatever the hell Travel Foreman is drawing. So, yeah, aliens. And he's like, okay, so I'm not animal. Hold on. You're saying my daughter has to do what? And she's like, oh, she has to fight in a war for all of life and everything. And it's happening right now. So, that's cool. Cut back to the mom and the son. They're playing some like Resident Evil knockoff on whatever game system it's technically going to be. And there's a knock at the door, and it's one of the hunters, but his body has completely fallen apart, but he's still trying to like keep it together. He's like, hello, Miss Baker, as just these tentacles all writhe. She's understandably freaked. Buddy is again saying, forget it, my daughter's 4 years old, she's not joining in your war. And it's like, no, you don't have a choice in this. Like, this is her destiny. This is going to happen. But then they're interrupted because the other two hunters have infiltrated the red, and they're like, all right, we're here to feed on you. Cut back to the house. The other hunters running in, chasing after the mom and the son. When all of Maxine's little dead animals that she brought back to life start attacking the hunter, and for a moment he's like stunned. He's like, oh my god, they're so pretty and they're not from the red. I feel a connection to and then he's attacked. They manage to get out into the car. The hunter throws himself onto the car, but they speed off, and they're just like, all right, we got to figure out what to do. Back inside the red, Animal Man is trying to protect his daughter. He feels this surge of power from being directly in the red. He can feel it, it's never felt this pure to him before. And he just starts unloading on these guys, but he's taking a beating on his own. Maxine begs for the totems to help his dad, and he's like, hey, kid, we're done with our fight. This is on you now. You got to take care of this. Only you can help. The mom arrives at some diner, makes a phone call to the detective way back in, I think, issue 1 that helped out Buddy, and was like, hey, we got bad things happening. I'm the wife of Animal Man. Please come to this diner and help us. And he's like, yep, I'll be right there. Animal Man starts he's got some weird transformations going on again. He looks like the best way I can describe it is Sloth from the Goonies, like that. And he's just trying to beat up the hunters as Maxine gets a feeling that her mom and her brother are both in danger and they need to get out there to save them. So Buddy unleashes hell, but it's not quite enough. He's attacked by one of the hunters and bitten by her, and he's got a pretty big wound on his neck. And then we cut to the detective arriving at the diner, and as he's walking in, he is attacked by that last hunter. The hunter steals his skin, and now that it's fresh, he's actually able to play it off, and he walks in and he's like, oh, don't worry, everything's gonna be fine. One thing I really want to point out that just it's the little writing things like this, is that Maxine keeps on yelling out for her daddy. She's like, daddy, no, and as her dad is bitten, she screams out, daddy, no. And in response, the one hunter, in just a close-up panel of just his face, just says, daddy, yes. I love this writing so much. I'm giving this an 8.5. It is so good. It is so good. I love this story. I love the art. It's so grotesque, but it it fits. It's exactly like it's not grotesque for the sake of being grotesque. It's grotesque because it's what the story calls for, and it's done so beautifully. And the writing, I am all down for. It's juggling these two plots very well. And I'm able, like, despite the fact the art can be absolutely off the walls insane, I understand exactly what's happening between each panel. I know exactly where these characters are in relation to each other. I understand their size differences. I get it all. This is brilliant. I love this. So, yeah, no. Animal Man, 8.5. Only going up. I am so looking forward to the rest of this arc. Swamp Thing, number 3, written by Scott Snyder, art by Victor Ibañez and Yanick Paquette. Last left off with Alec Holland being saved by that white-haired girl that he's been dreaming about for so long, and she then pulls a gun on him, and yeah, this issue picks up nowhere near there. We have a doctor who's talking to a young child named William, and he's like, hey, look, William, I understand you have a situation, but you can't just keep yourself all, contained and stuff like that. You got to get out there. You got to make some friends, okay? You understand? And then we see William is stuck inside of a bubble. Like, it's not a literal bubble, but it is a plastic cage of, keeping all the air pure and stuff like that. Apparently he is allergic to chlorophyll, and I mean deadly allergic, and being out in, the world will kill him. So he's kept inside of this, but the doctor's basically telling him, look, I do scuba diving, okay? Look at all these fish on the wall that I've caught. That involves me being in a suit, being, contained, and being in a place that would kill me in minutes, but I still manage to have fun. You can do that same thing. You're in your containment thing, but you can still find ways to have fun. Got it, William? And William's like, I guess so. But then he notices one of the fish is calling his name, like, William. And he's a little bit freaked out, but they wheel him out of the room, and the doctor's like, all right, so try to make some friends out there, William. Okay, bye. Close the door, and the kids are like, hey, William, hi. Oh, man, how is the doctor? And as soon as the door closes, one of the kids, he leans up next to William's thing, and he pulls out a fork, and he's like, I'm going to pop your bubble boy. Tonight at midnight, I'm going to stab it real good. His name is Drew. I don't like Drew. Then we come back to, the actual main story. And the white-haired girl, who I'm just going to say Abby Arcane. She learns his name at some point, but Abby Arcane is holding the gun to Alec and is like, hey, do something now. You've got to the count of 3. And Alec's like, I don't understand what you're talking about. He's like, 1, 2, 3. And he freaks out, and then he opens his eyes after he hasn't been shot, and this tree is holding back Abby so that she can't fire. And he's like, okay, how'd that happen? He's like, you exercised your green thumb. You've still got a little bit of power in you. Anyway, let's go. And I was like, you tell me why you saved me first, or else I'm going to use my green thumb again. And he's like, look, just get on the bike. And he's like, no, look, you were about to kill me. You want to prove who I was. Now I have memories. I have dreams of you. Who are you? And he's like, I'm Abigail Arcane. Get on my bike. And he's like, I swear to God, I'm going to use my green thumb again. She's like, fine, look, we have to go rescue a boy. He's in a hospital, and I need your help. Okay? Can we go? So then we cut back to the hospital where William is. I don't think he's in the doctor's office, but he can still hear the fish. And they're calling his name still. All the fish on the wall, these dead fish. And he's like, William, it's time. You know who calls you. It's time to serve him, William. And they're all chanting his name as Drew and 2 other bullies come up with a fork. And they're like, all right, we're going to cut you out of there, Willie. And the fish is like, do it now. And then William does it. And he puts out his hands towards Drew, still in his bubble, and Drew just starts, exploding. Spikes start forming all over his body, and he screams out in pain. One of the kid's eyes and mouth start bleeding. Another one's torso just distends and, expands out. Doctor hears all the screaming, comes in, and William's just standing there over 3 corpses like, hello, Doctor. Tell me, do you like me making friends? The doctor, he's coughing like crazy. And William asks, oh, Doctor, do you keep your scuba equipment in your truck? You know you shouldn't be smoking. You have so much death in your lungs. So he wheels out William at, I guess, his forcefulness, whims? I can't tell if he's forcing him. And the point is made that William can control all dead matter. Anything dead he can control. So all those sick kids had dead things in them. And he has, some form of dead skin because of smoking. So he's able to just crush the guy's lungs. And it's revealed throughout this whole thing that some people are born with a connection to the green, some people are born with a connection to the red. This kid was born with a connection to the black, which is the rot and death and disease. And if he is able to truly become an avatar of it, it would spell the end of the world. And he asks, all right, well, how do you know all this? And we get the full backstory that Abby Arcane, his uncle has her uncle has a strong connection to the rot. She has a strong connection to the rot. But when she was with Swamp Thing before this whole series took place, it wasn't so bad. She was able to block it out because Swamp Thing was such a big thing of the green. But once he left, the rot started coming to her and saying, it's calling, you're going to have to serve him. So now she's like, all right, well, I'm trying to ignore it, and I'm trying to save the boy. So she arrives at the hospital with Alec. They walk in. Dead bodies everywhere. The doctor's lungs are coming out of his mouth as he collapses to the ground. Abby's like, oh, crap, we're too late. And he's like, what do you mean too late? Who is this boy? And she's like, look, I'm the one who put him in the hospital because he is my half-brother, William Arcane. And we see William walking through the woods, dragging along a scuba gear, wearing the mask, and off to join the rot and welcome hell on Earth. And that's where we leave off. Wow. Okay, so a lot of developments happening this issue. I really like the pacing of it because all within one issue, they managed to introduce William, get me to care about him, and then immediately flip it on his head where, oh, wait, no, he's going to kill everyone. That's bad. And on top of that, they did the whole Abby thing. This is brilliant writing. This is really good, solid writing. Art-wise, it's very good. I can't tell. I think I actually like... Some of the art is Yanick Paquette. Some of the art is Victor Ibañez. I actually think I might like Victor's art a little bit more than Yanick, but they are both still super solid. My only thing in the trade collection is that because of the way this double-page spread comes in, they had to put these black pages on either side. And the one black page isn't even a black page. It's got a skeleton girl on it, so I don't even know if that's in the original one. It's just a skeleton girl after he activates his green thumb. And then after the double page, it's just a normal black page. I don't know. I have no idea. It's just a tiny little thing. It's not even that worth noting. I'm going to give this one an 8. It's very solid. I very much enjoy where it's going. They've set up... I mean, this one also has Seth, right? Seth? the giant mammoth thing? Yes. So this one not only has a giant mammoth bone monster as a villain, but it also has this tiny little boy wearing scuba gear. And I'm down for both of them. This is great. I'm 8 out of 10. Looking forward to seeing where it goes from here. And that's it. That is all the comics that came out this week, November 2nd, 2011, from DC Comics. And I gotta tell you, after 3 times through week number 1, I think the combo of Animal Man Swamp Thing right there at the end, that's the chef's kiss. That's the mwah right there at the end. I honestly think that might be enough to push week 1 to being my favorite week out of all 4 of them. But then I have to consider the fact that I also, on week 1s, have to deal with the O.M.A.C and the Static Shocks and the Hawk and Doves and, possibly worst of all, the Green Arrows. I never thought Green Arrow would be at the bottom of that list, but here we are. And I'm scared to continue. But, I mean, it's entirely possible that week 2 or 4 or 3 may surprise me. So let's take a look at week 2. Week 2, November 9th, 2011, is releasing such comics as the number 3 issues of Batman and Robin, Batgirl, Batwoman, Superboy, Green Lantern, Mr. Terrific, Deathstroke, Grifter, Suicide Squad, Legion Lost, Demon Knights, Frankenstein, Agent of Shade, and Resurrection Man. In addition, we're picking up on 2 miniseries with the number 2 issues of Huntress and Penguin, Pain and Prejudice. I mean, out of those, Demon Knights, pretty good. Frankenstein, I'm liking. I also have to deal with Mr. Terrific and Superboy out of that, but we'll see where it goes. Hey, if you have any thoughts on any of the comics I just listed, any of the comics I just read, or any comic I'm ever going to talk about ever, feel free to hit me up on Twitter at DC Comics Podcast. That is at DC Comics Podcast. Use the hashtag New52 because I'm not going to read it otherwise. I'm just not. In fact, I'm going to contact Twitter and report you if you don't use the hashtag New52. How dare you think you're above my rules? Additionally, we have a Patreon. You can reach it at Mild Fuzz TV. That is Mild Fuzz TV. If I have to pay into it, so do you. And I do have to pay into it. So guess what you're doing, moneybags? But alas, that is it for me. I have read my 13 books, I have talked about my 13 books, and I have documented it all for you. Oh, one thing I did want to bring up, and I'll make sure to talk about it at the beginning of next episode, week number 5 is actually a thing this week. There is a 5th week for November 30th, 2011, and as it stands, there's only one book that I'm going to be covering. So if anybody has any ideas as to how they would want me to extend that to an actual length episode, feel free to let me know, because I'm bouncing around a couple ideas, but I'm not set in stone on anything. So yeah, that'll do it for me. I'm going to bed now. Good night. And as always, just remember, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.